So I've been playing a lot of Kaizo Ironmon, which is a randomized Pokemon game in which you only get to run one Pokemon. There's a lot of other things that make it difficult, but for today's video, today's topic, what I want to talk about is whether a mixed attacker is viable in a randomizer or not. So this is a Skarmory. This Skarmory here is a Skarmory that I got to the Elite Four. It died on the third trainer of the Elite Four, but I got a lot of mileage out of this Pokemon because, in case you don't know, in Generation 3, all moves of a certain type are physical or special, and so as a result, I have very high special attack, right? I have a 170 special attack. I have an 86 attack, which is about half that of my special attack, so my special attacks are going to do about twice as much damage. But this Pokemon, I have a bunch of special attacks. Hydro Cannon, Solar Beam, not really great moves. But Extra Sensory is a very good move, has a base power of 80. And then I have Aeroblast, which is a physical move. So I had Extra Sensory, a special move, and Aeroblast, which is a physical move. And I got a lot of mileage on this run by scouting out which Pokemon were weak to physical moves, which were weak to special moves, and then attacking it with the appropriate move, because these moves both hit about equally as hard. So I got a lot of mileage out of that. And I guess before I get into things, I have one more example. This is Carabear, the Blaziken. This is a Pokemon that I got very, very deep into. I got to the champion fight, and I basically had a coin flip to see whether this Pokemon was going to win or not, and I lost my coin flip. It was a little bit better than a coin flip, but I lost my coin flip to lose this run. And you'll notice about this Pokemon that Flamethrower is a special move because all fire types are special, but then Jump Kick and Pin Missile are physical moves. And this is another run where I got a lot of mileage, even though my attack is 260, which is 100 more than my special attack, which means that my attacks are going to do about 5/3 as much damage. I got a lot of mileage by scouting out, okay, these Pokemon are, the ability is Compound Eyes, by the way, so Jump Kick and Pin Missile always hit. But I got a lot of mileage out of scouting out, okay, which Pokemon are going to be weak to which type of attack, and then scouting that out for the Pokemon. So these are two examples where I got a lot of mileage out of having a mixed attacker, or like having a Pokemon with one sort of specialty, and then having a different type of attack mixed in that does the opposite type of damage. And I want to demonstrate mathematically why that's viable. And so in order to demonstrate this, what I did is that I went through the generation process and generated a bunch of random seeds. So if we look at this line here, this is one random draw of a seed. So basically, this is the stat assignment for one random seed. And I have, if we zoom out of this, many seeds. So I generate about 10,000 random Pokemon with random stats to demonstrate like what percentage of them are going to be more weak to physical versus more weak to special, to sort of demonstrate how viable this is. So just so that you know, how did I generate these random stats? I did this in the exact same way a randomizer generates random stats. So what you do, for the nerds out there who are interested in this, like myself, what the randomizer does, and shout-outs to the people in the Ironmon Discord, by the way, for helping me figure this out, is that you generate a random number between 0 and 1. So these are randomly generated numbers, which Excel is weird, so I just like cut and pasted the random numbers. So I generated random numbers for every stat. You sum up all those numbers to get a sum. Then the weight of each stat is basically the random number divided by the sum, right? So, and that gives you a weighting. And it basically, you just take that weighting, multiply it by the BST, and then bingo bango, that becomes your stat for that. And you'll see in the total that the total is around 600, because the way that the rounding works, because you round whatever the weighting is to the nearest whole number, because you can't have like a half of a stat or something like that. 600 BST Pokemon can, in theory, have 599 BST. It can have 601. Right here, it has 602. So anyways, that's how I generate all the random stats, is the exact same way. And then you have to throw out random generations where it generates a number that's higher than 255. So you also have to make sure you do that too. So I have like a little indicator over here that throws it out if it's illegal. So we'll throw it out if it's illegal. Okay. So I generated 10,000 seeds for Pokemon with 600 BST. So 600 BST Pokemon are pretty worrisome, because if they're defensive enough, that poses a really big problem. So what did I do? I looked at, well, what is the probability that a Pokemon is above a certain amount of defense? So you see the total number of seeds that are legal seeds is about 15,000, about 16,000 seeds. So first, I wanted to look at, okay, what's the probability that you roll a Pokemon that has greater than or equal to 110 defense? Because 110, I think, is like a reasonable guideline of like, okay, maybe that's problematic for, you know, if you roll a Pokemon that have defense, if you're trying to hit it on the physical side, you probably are in the Elite Four are not going to like one-shot it. It's probably going to be something that's a little bit difficult. So the probability you roll a Pokemon that's greater than or equal to 110 defense is about 42%. So a lot of 600 BST Pokemon are going to be a little bit more on the physically bulky side, right? That makes sense. 110 is pretty close to 100, which is the average of things. So yeah, so it's pretty bulky. So the question is, given that you roll a Pokemon that has greater than 110 defense, what is the probability? So remember, if we go back to Burb, my special attack is twice that of my attack stat. So if I attack with the special attack with 60 power, or I attack with the physical attack with 60 power, if the special defense and regular defense of the defending Pokemon are the same, the special attack is going to deal twice as much. But if the special defense stat is twice that of the regular defense stat, they're going to hit exactly the same in terms of hardness, and that's because the way that this enters the damage formula is that it has attack divided by defending stat. So basically, the ratio of those two things is going to be what's important, essentially. Essentially, that's the thing. So basically, if I roll a defense stat that's twice as much, or sorry, in this case, a special defense stat that's twice as much as a defensive stat, then I should be hitting this with a physical ability if that's the case, right? Because then, even though my attack is half that of my special attack, I should be using my attacks because that ratio is going to be better. So in the results, if a Pokemon rolls above 110 defense, the probability that the special defense stat is less than half that of the defense stat, i.e. that a special attack will hit harder, according to my bird, is 40%. So if I roll a Pokemon with this defense, 40% of the time, it's going to have twice the defense of the special defense. And this is the same stat on the other side. It's pretty similar, right? It makes sense because defense and special defense are kind of rolled in the exact same way. So here, this is at 40% of the time, if I roll a Pokemon with above 110 special defense, the physical defense of the Pokemon will be twice as low, will be 50% or less of the special defense stat. So that means that hitting Pokemon with the opposite move is going to be really good 40% of the time when you roll a defensively tanky Pokemon. But now let's look at the probability that it's 3 times less than the defense stat. So let's look at the probability that the special defense stat is 3 times lower, i.e. it's a third or less than the defense stat. So if you hit it with the special attack here, with this probability, it's gonna be sort of way more effective to hit with a special attack. So 25% of the time, a special attack will do way more damage than a regular attack when hitting a Pokemon with this high of defense, okay? So that's the type of stat that I want, because I want to know if I run a mixed attacker, even if it's the case that a Pokemon doesn't have that great of an attack stat, or it doesn't have that great of a special attack stat, I want to know if I just run that attack anyways as a coverage option, how likely is that to work? And so here, 25% of the time, it's likely to be a pretty good move, even if I have half as much damage coming from the special attack here. With 25% probability, it's going to do more damage anyways. So now I also ask the question, what if you limit this to 120 defense instead? Maybe you have a lot of attack. Maybe you're looking for a little bit bulkier of a cutoff. Then what happens? Well, you get this bulky of a Pokemon 35% of the time. That's pretty frequent. When you do hit that Pokemon, a special attack the special defense will be half that of the defense 43% of the time, or about 44% of the time. It'll be a third of the defense 27% of the time. So the bulkier a Pokemon gets, in one stat, the less stats it has to allocate to its other stats, the more likely it is that the opposite type of attack is going to hit it. And there's no more better way of demonstrating that than looking at the probability of having a greater than or equal to 150 defense. Well, this only happens like 16% of the time, so this is kind of like on the, on sort of the far side of the bell curve. But when this does happen, it's going to be the case that special attacks are sort of way more effective about 37% of the time. So as a Pokemon gets more and more bulky in one stat, it's way more likely that the opposite type of attack is going to hurt it. And even better, if the Pokemon is bulky in both stats, so say that it has greater than 150 defense and greater than 150 special defense, which is possible, well then it's going to have very few stats to allocate to everything else, which means that's probably not going to hurt very much. So you have to worry about like statuses and things like that, but it's probably not going to hurt much. So basically, by having a mixed spread of attacks, you can counter these really bulky Pokemon that are not likely to die in one hit. And if a Pokemon's bulky in both directions, you can you sort of counter the Pokemon by virtue of it not doing quite as much damage. So there are a lot. So I hope that this demonstrates that like 37% of the time, being able to bust down a really big tanky 600 BST Pokemon, that's a lot of BST, right? That's banned in Kaizo Ironmon. That is like such an important tool. And I think that one way to think about having a mixed attack, like so say that you're primarily a special attacker and then you run a physical move, you could think of that as like a coverage option, right? It's like a coverage option against tanks. So I think that having that coverage option there can be really useful in runs. And it could be worth running that over a attack that matches your typing, but doesn't cover that many more Pokemon types or doesn't really deal that much damage comparatively. I think that running a split actually is really good. Now, you have to scout out for that split. You got to be careful that you're scouting out, that you know what's weak to what, because it's very important. It can cost you a run if that happens. So you have to be careful to scout. But given that you have a lot of information about Pokemon by the time you get to the Elite Four, well then, you're going to know, okay, well, against this Pokemon that's really defensively bulky, I should probably hit this with a special attack and it's going to melt. So even though I don't have that high of special attack, right? So I think mixed attackers can be really good. I do think that, so I also calculate the probability that defense and special defense are relatively equal. What do I mean by that? What I mean is that, so basically I looked at, this is the probability that neither the defense is half the special defense or the special defense is half that of the defense. So basically everything that's not covered in one of one of these cases of like special attack or physical hitting harder. So 56% of the time, the defense and special defense are going to be relatively equal. And this isn't taking into account high defense or low defense. So 56% of the time, they're going to be relatively equal in the sense that one's not going to be half the other. So like, to be fair, against a majority of Pokemon, you can hit it with your primary stat, and that's going to be good enough. But in that other 45% of the time, one of the attacks is going to be way, way better. It's going to be either the physical or the special side. And so having that option on that 45% of Pokemon is really, really, really nice as long as you can gain that information in a timely fashion. And I think that is such a high proportion of Pokemon that it's worth thinking about anytime you're running some sort of like Kaizo Ironmon or randomizer type challenge where you have one Pokemon, you're trying to think about the spread. So one question you might have is, well, Sean, this is 600 BST. Well, not all Pokemon you're going to run up against are 600 BST. So I did the exact same thing for 500 BST just to see what the results would look like for 500 BST. So you can see this is a bunch of generations. I did the exact same process of generating like 10,000 seeds, generate a bunch of stats for that. So this is another 10,000 seeds for this. These are the results for that. One thing that you can see from this is that immediately, if I scroll up to this, the probability of rolling a greater than 110 defense Pokemon drops off a lot. It's only 25% here, 25% here. But if you do roll a really high defensive Pokemon, so like say here I roll 150 defense Pokemon, which happens only 5% of the time with a 500 BST Pokemon, right? So very unlikely to happen. If I roll a very defensive Pokemon, 70% of the time, the special defense is going to be half that of the physical defense. So 70% of the time, a special attack is going to hit harder. 50% of the time, this is about 50% of the time, the special attack is going to hit way harder because if a low BST Pokemon rolls a really high number in one of the stats, it doesn't happen very often, but if it does happen, it's very unlikely to have really good numbers in the other stats. And if it does, then that Pokemon's not going to really be threatening in terms of doing physical and special attacks because it has so few stats to allocate to those other things. So against low BST Pokemon, it's actually even better to have a mixed attack slot because you can kill some of these walls, which might pose a problem to you, and you can think about it as coverage. And once again, I looked at the probability, it's relatively equal. This is about the same in that case, so everything sort of lines up. So wrapping this back to the very beginning, right, I talked about how I had this Pokemon Burb, right, and Burb was a Pokemon that I got to the Elite Four. And so the way that this Pokemon died is that I had a Starmie that I was against that I didn't know what its physical and defensive spread was. I used a Solar Beam on it, and the Pokemon didn't die to the Solar Beam. It only did half the health of the Solar Beam. But what I think is that had I Aeroblasted that Starmie twice instead of charging a Solar Beam and using a Solar Beam, then I will never know this because I never checked the seed, but maybe this Pokemon would have been a Kaizo Ironmon champion if I had known that information. So I think that it can be very powerful. Thank you all for listening to this. I hope that this was informative. I hope that what I said makes sense. If it didn't, ask in the comments below. Chat, you can say bye to YouTube. We're live on Twitch at twitch.tv/econshun, so be sure to find me there if you have any questions about this. But I think that mixed attackers are really good in these types of challenge. So yeah, but I beat this challenge once. I'm going to try and beat it again. So bye, everyone on YouTube. Chat, say bye, YouTube. Bye, YouTube. Take care, YouTube. Goodbye. All right, chat, fun. Did you guys enjoy that? Hi to everyone, by the way. Hello. You want questions? Awesome. Ask questions. Do it. Ask some questions. What type of questions do you have? I like questions. Let's hear questions. Yeah, anyone have any questions? Classroom, do you have any questions? Any questions about this? But yeah, I actually think this turned out really well. I think that these stats are like pretty convincing. I'm very convinced by this that like a lot of the time when you hit a really high defense Pokemon, even if it has really high BST, then you have a really good chance to hit it harder with another move. I think that's pretty insane. Can you yeah, I can't do that. I can't show favoritism, but yeah. Well, so it's not that I think that like having a high special attack and then a move that covers like physical, it can be really good. I think that like I would run a physical move over a move that covers like a small portion of Pokemon. Like I think that tanks are a really big problem. I've seen these tanky Pokemon end a lot of runs. I've seen these Pokemon end a lot of Kaizo Ironmon runs. And so if these Pokemon are liable to end your run, well, I could run a move that covers a type of Pokemon that I'm not really worried about, or I could run a move that's likely to bust down these tank Pokemon, i.e. a attack of the other type, and that's going to be more likely to work versus a versus just running some sort of like other coverage move, especially in Gen 3 where like everything is either physical or special anyways, so like you also get another typing that goes along with that as well if you decide to run like a physical move on this Pokemon. Like this isn't the best example because like Aeroblast and Extrasensory actually do about the same amount of damage, but like I think that this demonstrates mathematically that like having a mixed attacker can be very powerful, right? I mean, this is like a 39% chance of busting down a tank, or 37% chance of busting down a tank, like when it's gonna really wall, like when it's gonna wall you, and then the other 63% of the time, it's not likely to be an issue because it rolled greater than 150 special defense and then pretty high in the other stat too. No, you don't. So I don't think I was saying that you want to split stats between the two attacks. I agree that that's not good, but it can be okay if you have good scouting. Like if you have good scouting here, then like I mean the problem with splitting, and I agree with you that splitting between the two attacks, like you're gonna run into a problem with these Pokemon here, right? So like splitting between the two attacks is gonna be bad for that, but I think that if you have unbalanced attack stats, so for these Pokemon, you're hitting them pretty hard with your primary attack stat, and then for these other Pokemon here, then you have the option of busting them down. I think that's where the mixed value comes in. I think that running a sort of like non-physical move, your physical attacker, or non-special move, your special attacker, can be really powerful in case you run into a Pokemon like this, right? Which happens 15% of the time, is really, really frequent. Yeah, so we're on the same page. Yeah.